This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham. It's Wednesday. We got Seth Megginson with us. We're going to talk a lot of college football on this podcast. And Seth, the calendar turning now. Today's Halloween. It's turning to November. It starts to get to be serious time in the college football world, and we've got a pretty serious game. Let's start with Alabama-LSU. It doesn't get any bigger than this. It's 1 versus 3. And the odd question when you talk about this 1 versus 3 matchup is, and it's LSU being the number 3 team, they're the home team here. And so the odd question is, can the number 3 team at home stay on the field with the number 1 team, Alabama? It's weird that we're in that place talking that way. Alabama, though, is a double-digit favorite on the road. Can LSU, Seth, can they stay with Alabama and make this competitive?
I believe they can. This year, going into it, I was not very high on this LSU football team. I feel like they constantly prove me wrong every time. I didn't think they beat Miami. They handled Miami pretty well. I didn't think they beat Auburn in Auburn. They were able to pull that one out. Didn't think they were going to beat Georgia at him a few weeks ago. And then they didn't just win. They dominated that game. So I'm not going to count LSU out anymore. I know this is Alabama. And I expect Alabama to win this game, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be double digits. I really don't. I think at worst it's going to be a 10-point game, which would be double digits, but that's the worst that I could possibly see it. I think that LSU is going to play them tough. I really do. Even over the past couple of years, I feel like when you watch this game, Alabama's won it quite handily, but it hasn't been very, impressive on the part of Alabama when they play LSU. I feel like LSU is always pretty good about containing them. Also, I think this is the toughest test that Alabama has had all year. I mean, you look at their schedule, and maybe besides A&M, the schedule really hasn't been that tough for Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going to do in a hostile environment against a good and more than game football team in LSU, who's already been tested with a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah, you make a few good points there. I mean, this is LSU at night. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. So LSU is a tough place to play. Death Valley, the original Death Valley, is always a tough place to play. It's particularly tough at night. And this is a good LSU team. I'm just looking at the numbers, though. And numbers are what they are. You pointed out Alabama hasn't played a tough schedule yet. But 54 points a game, 54.1 points a game to be specific. 564.3 total yards per game offensively for Alabama. 347 through the air, 216 rushing. I guess previous Alabama teams in this great decade plus of Nick Saban, they've been built around solid defense, and this team's a good defensive team too. Gives up 15.9 points and 307.9 yards per game, so it's still a pretty stout Alabama defensive team. But they've been built around that stout defense, and then sort of the game manager quarterback model. Just don't screw things up. Have big running backs. You throw when you need to. But you win, the Saban teams win by a conservative approach, win with defense, and that's how they've been dominant. It's sort of like the New England Patriots of college football. Well, this year with Tua at quarterback, it's a different breed of Alabama, a different speed to the Alabama attack. They're still playing a great defense, and I guess the reason Saban his inclination is always towards a very conservative offensive approach, because when you move the ball up and down the field the way this Alabama team does, you could maybe have some turnovers. You can also you score so quick, your defense is back out there a lot quicker than you might like if you're a defensive-minded coach. But it's working for Alabama, obviously. And on the other side, LSU, pretty stout himself, 330 yards a game, 15.1 points per game. They score 30.4 points per game. So against a tougher schedule, they've looked pretty good. But this Alabama team just feels so different than the previous iterations of Saban Alabama teams that's why I guess we're all astounded at what they've been able to do this year.
Yeah, this is definitely the best offensive team that Nick Saban's had since he's been at Alabama. And I'm not trying to say that with how the schedule has been, that's not that good of a football team. That would be crazy to be saying that. They are definitely a really good football team. The best team in the country. I honestly believe that, just like everybody else. But I'm just saying that I don't think going into this game that it's going to be the cakewalk that the line seems to think, like the betting line seems to think, and maybe some Alabama fans might seem to think. I really think LSU is going to give them a tough game here. I think it's going to come down to probably the last few possessions, and I look for Bama to win, but if, like I said, if Bama wins by more than 10 points, I
But I like your point about the schedule. You can't schedule. The schedule is what it is. But you just look at the last 5 games these teams have played, which dates back to the week of September 22nd. Alabama's played just one ranked team, and I'm not sure if I really think of Texas A&M with 3 losses this season as being a ranked team, but they are. They're 5-3, and that's the one game, and that was the 5 games ago that Alabama played. They've played since then. They played Louisiana Lafayette, Arkansas, Missouri, and Tennessee. Missouri probably of that group. The only team that, even though they're not ranked, maybe the toughest team, if you want to call it that. Whereas LSU's last 3 games have been against ranked teams. They lost to Florida, but then they beat Georgia handily, and also beat Mississippi State. And so they're tougher. I guess if you're LSU and you have to come in playing Alabama, you want to be as battle tested as possible, and they are as battle tested as possible, and do have that home field advantage. Now, I'll point out, I guess, looking at the Vegas numbers, 15-point spread for Alabama and an over-under of 54. So roughly what Vegas is thinking is 34-20-ish. That'd be 14 points, but it still adds up to the 54. So that's vaguely what Vegas sees this game at. And, looking at the numbers of what LSU's given up just the last 5 weeks, they haven't given up anywhere close to that many points. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out, just because – we're all assuming it's going to be an Alabama cakewalk, 1 at 3 at night in a tough place to play. But I agree with you, Seth. I'm just not too sure about that margin being what what Vegas at least thinks. I agree with you. 10 points and maybe 10 points with an asterisk, because I think it's going to be a game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I totally agree. If LSU comes out in this game and plays flat and Alabama runs them off the field, then yeah, this might be the greatest team that we've ever seen. Like some people will say. Some people have been saying. But yeah, I don't expect that. I think it's going to be a close, hardball game. I think this could be the game where Tua makes this Heisman moment. He's pretty much already got the thing wrapped up, I feel like. But this is probably the game where he can definitely make a statement, maybe have a big play in a close game, then ends up just stealing it for him.
I was a guest on a radio show today, and I was asked the question, so does Tua play the fourth quarter of this game? And we both seem to agree it's going to be a close enough game that he'll clearly play the fourth quarter. It's still an odd thing about 2018 college football that we have to ask if the quarterback for the number 1 team in the country playing a game at the number 3 team, if he'll even play the fourth quarter. But I'm not sure that, because we haven't seen him have to put up fourth quarter numbers, because they've put up such good numbers through halves and 3 quarters that we haven't really seen Tua have to, put up a full game. I'm not sure that Alabama, by the fourth quarter of this game, is going to need Tua to be throwing the ball all over the field. I think by that point, it's going to sort of be game control mode. If Alabama has a touchdown lead or maybe a 10-point lead, they will be inclined to want to run the ball, because that's the way you win games against tough teams on the road. So even though this will be that sort of Heisman moment for him, if assuming Alabama gets the win at LSU, I don't know that we'll see those Heisman numbers. I mean, he has the numbers already, so I think, as you made the point, he already has the numbers. He already has it sewn up. He kind of just needs this feather in the cap, huge win on the road to really cement it for himself. But, yeah, I don't know that we're going to get what we really want, which is 4 quarters of Tua in a competitive game, because I just don't think Alabama's defense is going to allow that to be the case.
Yeah, that's very true. And, yeah, I think more than anything going into this game, it's not about the numbers like you were saying that he put up. It'd be maybe he leads the game-winning touchdown drive, has a touchdown pass or a big throw or a big run that changes how the momentum of the game was facing. Yeah, I agree that I don't think that it's going to be amazing. I don't think his stats are going to be as good in this game as they've been in the game stats. I think this will probably be most likely his worst statistical game of the season. Maybe if they decide that they play Clemson or something in the national championship. As I say, I'm not saying he's going to have bad numbers, but I don't think he's going to put up anywhere close to the numbers that he had been putting up before this game.
Yeah, LSU a little bit stouter defensively than those other opponents this season. So let's switch gears and let's look at Maryland. So we were in the SEC where there's good football played, and now we're going to talk about Maryland where there's not good football played. Actually, Maryland's 5-3 this year, so not to pick on them too much. But they've been 5-3 in the absence of their head coach, DJ Durkin, who was put on the sidelines after the death of Jordan McNair back in a late spring training conditioning drill. And the university's investigation into that, which I thought, and I guess a lot of people thought, and I'll get your thoughts on this too, Seth, I thought was clearly going to go in the direction of, okay, Durkin's gone, the AD's gone, the trainer's gone, the president's probably gone, and in fact, they're not. Durkin's back. Now you're hearing reports that some players walked out when the announcement was made that Durkin will be back. The Maryland student body is protesting. What an odd situation. Were you surprised by this news that that Durkin is going to be back at Maryland?
Yeah, when I saw this yesterday, I just couldn't believe it. I was kind of like flabbergasted, almost at a loss for words, because I'm just like you, and probably 98% of the people in America who will follow college football thought Durkin's time is done at the University of Maryland. This is like, honestly, I have a hard time gathering words to say for the situation, because it's just so dumbfounding to me that they're bringing him back, and then when you hear that the players walked out of the meetings and stuff like that, like you said, it's a 5-3 football team, and you're bringing this guy back kind of for no reason at all. Like, there's no reason to bring Durkin back. At least I don't feel like there is. I mean, you have all the reason in the world not to bring him back, but yet you're bringing him back anyways. I just don't really understand it. I think it's going to hurt the morale of the football team. They're still playing for a bowl game. Like I said, it's hard to find the words just because it was just so out of left field. Didn't see it coming. I mean, this was a kid's life was lost. I don't know, Chris. It's hard for me to even put into words how I just can't believe that they're bringing him back for the rest of the season when they really didn't have any reason to.
Well, yeah, they're 5-3. He has a career losing record at Maryland as the head coach. When he was a hire a couple of years ago, he was an attractive hire. I mean, one of those coordinators on the rise kind of things. But his time at least as the head guy had not seen that success yet. Now you could argue, I guess, that it's the system he put in place. His offensive coordinator Matt Canada has taken over as interim, and he was 5-3, but he was running his program for him. Maybe you could argue that. Here's the thing that's hard for me to figure out too. Because we're getting ready to go in November, obviously a very important time for recruiting. I mean, there is now that December early commitment deadline, and then of course the early February deadline for everybody else. But this is the time of year. High school football is getting towards its postseason. I guess the last week of the regular season for a lot of states across the country. And so this is a time where any non-committed players are going to be committing, and then of course, until a kid signs on the dotted line and faxes it in, and they still actually make you fax it in this day and age, they still have to fax it. But until they do, you're a non-committed player. Until you sign, you can still sign somewhere else or commit somewhere else. So how they can recruit? Why a parent? I mean, I guess I'm of parent age now. If I had a kid who was 17 years old and wanted to play college football, would I send him to the place that just had a kid die, and not just the kid die, but so irresponsibly, and then you read about the strength and conditioning coach throwing weights at players and all the stuff about belittling players who are overweight. I mean, just the whole atmosphere is toxic. And oh yeah, I want my kid to go there. That's what I want. And if I'm a kid in the stands rooting for the team, do I want to be in the stands rooting for the team? I'd be embarrassed. So it's got everything about this. I mean, if you're bringing him back now, that means you're bringing him back for next year. And what are you saying about your school? I would transfer. There's all this, and if I had a degree on the wall from University of Maryland, I would want to take it down. I don't know where to go with this either. I'm as dumbfounded as anybody, and yeah, I don't know how to make any sense of this.
Yeah, well, you said the thing about recruiting. How is he going to be able to walk into a person's house, talk to the mom and dad, and tell them your kid's going to be safe here? I mean, sure, you can say I learned from my mistakes, but that mistake is a really big mistake. It should have never been made in the first place. I don't understand it at all why Maryland is doing this. I just thought it was a foregone conclusion that Durkin was not going to be the head coach. I thought there might be a chance that they just keep Canada and make him the head coach for the remainder, keep him as head coach for the remainder of this year and into next year and see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, the players seem like they're already, at least some of the players are already pretty upset about it. I did see on ESPN today, one of the players tweeted out about how he doesn't know how this is going to work, or something of that sort of like kind of demonstrating that he's not happy about the fact that Durkin's coming back. I think that there's just so much negativity around this that I'm surprised that Maryland even entertained the thought of bringing him back, let alone actually is doing it.
Yeah, at a program that's been down for a long time. Hey, our good friend Urban Meyer too. You might have noticed this, because I think you have a lot of fond thoughts of him dating back to his days in Florida. Have you noticed how all of a sudden he's talking to the media about his headaches again? Do you think that might be a sign of what's going to happen to him after the season?
Well, I'm going to try to choose my words lightly here when talking about Urban Meyer, just in case I don't slip up and say anything. But now I saw that he yesterday was talking about his brain cyst, I believe is what it was. Yeah, and he said that he's had it since 1998, and it's awfully convenient to be bringing it up now. Yeah, I could see this being the last couple games at Ohio State for Urban Meyer, maybe the last couple games of his career. It might just be time for him to walk away. That's all I'll say on that.
And at least in Ohio State's case, Urban Meyer, I mean, bringing him back was reprehensible too, but at least they won games with him. If you're Maryland, you haven't won games with Durkin, and you brought him back. Oh, God, that's just sickening on all levels there. Let's talk a little bit of UVA-Pitt football coming up this weekend. You know, it used to be talking UVA football. Basketball certainly. Basketball starts next week too, but you know that's a fine thing to talk about with all the success that Tony Bennett's had. But talking UVA football was sort of an indulgence because all the negativity, 10 losing seasons in the last 11 years, only 2 bowl appearances. But now the top 25 Cavaliers hosting Pitt coming up on Friday night. Not an easy game to say the least. Pitt's 4-4, but 3-1 in the ACC. They're looking really good lately. But some excitement around Charlottesville in these parts with this Virginia football team playing so well. Your thoughts heading into Friday night? I think it's going to be a tough game, but certainly Virginia has its future in front of it. Win that game, and you have an inside track to Charlotte in that ACC championship game.
Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season that a Friday night, November 2nd game between UVA and Pitt might decide who's going to win the ACC Coastal? So they were picked, I believe, Pitt was either 5th or 6th in the Coastal predicted before the season started, and Virginia was 7th. And here they both are, 1 loss. Virginia is sitting on top of the Coastal standings, but Pitt's right there with them in the standings. They're 3-1, just behind, just because UVA played 1 extra ACC game. So it's a big game. We kind of talked last week about UVA maybe having the letdown game against North Carolina. That didn't happen, but of course, as someone who follows UVA closely, now I'm worried that the Pitt game will be the letdown game. But it should be a pretty close game. I don't think either one team is going to dominate this game. It's kind of hard to believe that Pitt still actually has a team that's capable of winning the division after you've seen them play in a couple games. They lost to North Carolina, which if you're a Pitt fan, you just got to be scratching your head on that one. But yeah, I really think that this UVA team has a chance to win the Coastal. I do, and this is a big game on Friday. I think it's going to be close and hard fought, kind of like I was saying about the Alabama-LSU game, but not to the caliber of that game will be. But yeah, it's a big game in Charlottesville. First time they've been ranked in an awfully long time. I'm sure they want to keep it that way, keep being ranked. So I'm thinking UVA will pull out a very close victory. Yeah,
I'm thinking it's going to be a track meet because the one vulnerability I think Virginia's got defensively, Virginia's numbers defensively are pretty good on the whole. I mean, this is a team that has really stepped up what it does defensively. He lost his best 3 guys from last year's defense: Quinn Blanding, Micah Kaiser, Andrew Brown, all to the NFL. And so you think going into the season, well, the strength of this team was defense, and they lost those guys. So and they weren't that good anyway last year defensively. They were towards the bottom of the ACC standings. And now you look at it, and they give up 327.4 yards a game, 18.8 points a game. I think they're 3rd in the ACC total defense in yards per game allowed, 2nd in points per game allowed. But the one vulnerability, and the stats don't really indicate it either. Right now, Virginia only giving up 186 yards a game on the ground. But that's a function as much of opponents who don't run the ball a lot or run it as much maybe as two of the next 3 teams they'll see, Pitt and Georgia Tech. But Virginia's 3-3-5 defensive alignment. Bronco Mendenhall brought that with him from BYU. It's really predicated. Last week, I mean, I noticed, when you're in the stadium live, you can see some things maybe you don't see on TV. There were some snaps against North Carolina where they had literally no down linemen. Nobody with their hand on the ground on third down plays, which makes it hard for offensive linemen to know even who to block because it's pretty much just 5 or 6 linebackers in the game standing up, and you don't know who's going to drop back into coverage or who's going to rush or whatever else. But you can't do that as much against a team like Pitt. Pitt is different than Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, they're going to cut block you. They're going to run the option. They're going to run the ball a lot that way. Pitt will run out of option looks. They'll run out of read option looks. They'll run out of 4 receiver looks, and they can throw the ball enough to make you honest. So you don't stack the box like you will against Georgia Tech, and so this Pitt team is perfectly designed to exploit what Virginia does defensively, and that's a concern. So when I look at this game and I say, but Pitt also itself is quite vulnerable defensively. They give up 32.6 points a game. They give up 436 yards a game. Those are towards the bottom of the ACC. So, I'm looking at this game being a 30s or 40s game. I'm looking at the over/under. It's real quick. The spread is UVA by 7.5, and the over/under. Well, I'm actually not seeing it right now. The over/under is not listed on where I am. But whatever the over/under is, pick the over. Is what I guess I would predict. If you're listening out there looking for my advice on how to bet, I would bet for Virginia to win by less than 7.5, and I would say over. As far as that goes. But it's going to be a tight game. And also, weather could be a factor. It looks like there's a forecast for rain for Friday night, so that could be a factor as well. That could make it even more of a running kind of game. So it should be interesting. But Virginia wins this one. And then if they're 5-1 in the ACC, they got 2 road games left, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. I think if they split those 2, they're playing Clemson and Charlotte. And nobody, including me, I was the optimist, Seth. I had Virginia 5th in the Coastal this year, and people looked at me like I was talking about the second coming happening in front of our eyes when I said 5th in the ACC. Oh yeah, you're the cockeyed optimist, Chris. 5th place. Who are they going to beat? And now they could run the table and win this thing out.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because I was one of those people who actually had them finishing last. I thought that they weren't going to have enough this year. I thought this was kind of a retooling year because after last year going to a bowl, I thought they lost a little too much and they probably dropped back a little bit, and then maybe next season would be the year they push for a bowl game again, and then we start seeing Broncos, style and all that start playing out in UVA. But now it seems like the team is definitely ahead of schedule, and I agree with you. If they can beat Pitt, I think all they need to do is split between Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech, and I think they'll play for the ACC championship. Now, it'd probably be better if they beat Tech than it would be, for both Tech. If they beat Virginia Tech rather than Georgia Tech, because I feel like Virginia Tech and those 2 are the only ones that could probably catch them. But with the way Virginia Tech looked last week, I don't know if that's even the case. They looked just awful. They looked like they couldn't stop anybody. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how Virginia can fare with these last 3 ACC games that they have with Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech.
Yeah, let's wrap our podcast talking about that Virginia Tech team that you just referenced. Now Virginia Tech is still very much in the mix in the Coastal, as Pitt is. Pitt's 3-1, Virginia Tech's 3-1, which is interesting considering how their season's gone. They're 4-3 overall, but the loss to Notre Dame doesn't count as an ACC loss. Notre Dame plays ACC everything else but football, and then of course that increasingly inexplicable loss to ODU earlier this season. But last week, got exploited by Georgia Tech, 49 points allowed in that loss at home, 49-28 on Thursday night. And, Virginia Tech has its schedule out in front of it. They got Boston College this weekend. They still have Miami to play, of course, Virginia to play later on. Clearly, Virginia Tech, if they can get back to being Virginia Tech, the old Virginia Tech, they can win this Coastal too, which is very interesting considering how the season's gone. But, boy, it's hard to look at what they've got right now. Both offensively and defensively, especially defensively. Though I'm looking at these numbers and it's just astounding. I'm looking at total yards allowed per game, 425.3. They give up 28 points per game. These are not Bud Foster numbers, at least not any time since the late 1980s Bud Foster numbers. And this Boston College team's for real. They can run the ball. They've got, of course, Dillon, the preseason offensive player of the year in the ACC, and he's putting up the good numbers: 801 yards, 7 touchdowns. BC gains 445 a game, scores 38 points a game, and they're ranked this week number 22 in the AP poll. So, and Boston College, this is what really gets you. At Virginia Tech, Boston College is actually favored by 2 in this game. So, wow, that says a lot about where Virginia Tech is right now, that the Vegas doesn't give them the respect on their own home turf to win this game. So, yeah, this is a huge game for Virginia Tech this weekend. They lose this game, and the rest of the season could be just playing for bowl eligibility. But they win the game, and they could be in the ACC championship game. What a turning point kind of game for the Hokies.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was about to say, there's kind of in a weird spot here where they could go either one of 2 ways. They could either turn their season around and actually play for the ACC title, or their season could just be a dumpster fire, and they might not even make a bowl for the first time, however long it's been. So yeah, this game is definitely a big game for them. Honestly, all 4 of those games that they have left are a big game for them. And it's not the easiest schedule. Boston College, then they have to go to Pitt. They've always struggled with Pitt. Pitt's kind of been one of those teams that no matter how good Tech is, Pitt always is going to play them tough. And then they have Miami, and then they have Virginia. So it's not an easy schedule. The one thing that they do have going for them is 3 of those 4 games will be in Blacksburg. But yeah, they could easily find themselves in Charlotte if they get it going. But then they can also find themselves sitting at home come bowl season if things keep going the way that it's going. So it's kind of crazy to see the position that they're in right now, where they could win the ACC Coastal, or they could just be sitting at home in a few weeks.
Yeah, this college football season in general is so odd. This 2018 college football season is so odd. Up is down is up. Cats and dogs sleeping together. It just doesn't make any sense. So. But it's of course it's fun for us to talk about. Well, Seth, thank you for joining us on the podcast, and we'll have you back on again next week.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Chris.